Intermittent fasting can activate the body's anti-tumor immune system and weaken the survival capability of cancer cells. That means that intermittent fasting has the potential to prevent cancer as well as fight cancer. Intermittent fasting also has the ability to help you build more and better muscle and bone while burning fat and resetting your metabolism. It reduces inflammation. It improves focus, energy, and sleep. Extended fasting helps you avoid Alzheimer's and dementia by healing your brain. It helps reverse diabetes by reducing glucose and insulin storage. It takes fat burning and healing to the next level by regenerating stem cells. It increases your body's ability to detox and even helps with anxiety and depression.
Welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast, where we provide education and inspiration to help guide you on your journey to look better, feel better, and most importantly, heal better.
Hello, and welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Schultz, and today we're going to talk about fasting. The intent of the podcast today is to arm you with the knowledge of why you may want to fast, the different methods of fasting, and how to incorporate them into your Make Health Your Hobby routine. Be sure to stick around to the end where, and ladies, you will love this, I am going to break down specifically how women in particular should fast. Whether you're still having a menstrual cycle, starting the perimenopause years of life with an erratic cycle that's all over the place, or you've already entered into the post-menopause years of life. I'm also going to answer the very important question that I get quite often: is it safe for kids to fast? This is for everyone, by the way. And before you start tuning me out or literally turning this podcast off, this is not about starving yourself. It's about optimizing when you eat and letting your body rest and digest so it can do what it was designed to do: heal. You don't need any supplements. You don't have to buy any fancy equipment. It's free, and I promise you it is powerful. One of the most powerful things that you can do to your body. And I think as we go through this podcast, you'll see exactly why I say that. In fact, I strongly believe that if fasting was a pharmaceutical drug, it would be considered the greatest wonder drug ever discovered, times 100 for that matter. For all of my female listeners, I know what you're probably thinking right now, but I've heard from you in the past, or I've heard from other podcasters and influencers that women shouldn't do intermittent fasting because of the differences in hormones between males and females. So this is absolutely partially true, and I have talked about this in the past. So don't worry, I will give you specifics on how you can still tap into all of the benefits of fasting without disrupting your hormones. Ultimately, when it comes down to fasting, if we break it down into its simplest form, which I always like to do with every topic, there are two different types of fasting. We have intermittent fasting, and then you have extended fasting. Intermittent fasting can be anything from 13 to 23 hours. So it's something that is done in one day, and then ideally it's done over time consistently to really reap the benefits of that. So this is where you're shortening the time in which you consume food throughout the day. So for example, if you have your first food at 11 a.m. and then your last meal at 7 p.m., that's 8 hours, that would be considered a 16-8 intermittent fast, which is a very popular one. It's one that you probably heard of before. It's talked about all the time, the 16-8 fast. It's very popular, and that is what I do personally, 4 to 5 days per week, typically on average, and I've done that for many, many years. You can also, of course, do more or less than a 16-8, and I'll go through today why there's benefits to really all of that. So I recommend, at a minimum, doing 16 hours when you can, of course, and especially as applies to women, because that is when something called autophagy starts to kick in, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a bit. There are some nuances for women on this, and we are going to, as I already mentioned, we're going to dive into that later in the show. intermittent fasting does not have to be difficult at all. That's the primary thing that I want to get across here. So as I said, don't tune out if you're like, oh, nope, not doing this. I've tried fasting. So just listen along and you will find it doesn't have to be difficult and the benefits are tremendous. So for men and women, it really just requires a little bit of discipline, not that much, but a little bit of discipline that gets easier over time of skipping your late night snacks and then delaying your breakfast a little bit more for men. And then for women, skipping your late night snacks and ideally eating a bit earlier in the night so you can get in some morning fuel to combat those cortisol spikes, as I've talked about in the past with my female-specific podcasts. The second type of fasting is what's called extended fasting. So extended fasting really is anything that is done beyond one day. So if you're going above 24 hours, and of course there can be some crazy, crazy long fasts. In the past, I used to do 10-day water fasts. I honestly don't have a lot of desire to do that anymore. But there's also tremendous benefits to doing something from 24 to 72 hours, which we'll really talk about in pretty good detail today as well. So these extended fasts are often referred to as water fasts. You have intermittent fasting, and then a lot of times people will say a water fast, even though an intermittent fast, you're also just usually drinking water. So we're going to discuss 3 important things to keep in mind really during intermittent or extended fasting. All 3 of these apply. So water, yes, you absolutely can drink water during those fasting periods without eating. You can also drink black coffee and you can drink teas as well. So those are perfectly acceptable. You do want to make sure that you're following, ideally, that no caffeine until 90 minutes after waking rule and then no caffeine after noon. Otherwise, you are just sabotaging some of your sleep the next night, whether you feel it or not. And then supplements are also okay as long as they are not food replacement supplements like protein powders or things that your body really has to work to break down. But simple supplements, capsules and tablets, those are absolutely acceptable. The second important thing to note is that whether you are fasting or not, you want to stop all food consumption, ideally at least 2 hours before going to bed, as I already mentioned, with women still wanting to get the benefits of intermittent fasting, but also the benefits of eating earlier in the day to reduce those cortisol spikes. You want to eat a little bit earlier. But for men, about 2 hours before going to bed to allow your body to enter the parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is also known as rest and digest. The third thing to keep in mind, like everything when it comes to our health, there are certainly variables. So things like metabolism, how active a person is, and your overall quality of health can play a big role in how quickly your body responds to the benefits of fasting. So basically, the better you eat, the more you move, and the healthier you are going to see faster and better benefits. But do not let that be a deterrent to you if you are not quite there yet. There are still tremendous benefits to fasting for almost everyone, and fasting can help you achieve better health. And as your health improves, guess what? You're going to be more motivated to eat better, to move more.
Nutridyne is my number one choice for the vast majority of my family supplements. I'm a huge fan of nearly everyone taking what I call the foundational 4 supplements: a multivitamin, a spore-based probiotic, omega-3 fish oil, and vitamin D3 with K2. The large majority of people are deficient in many of these nutrients, and they are the building blocks to gut health, immune system strength, brain health, heart health, and every other aspect of your health. Don't fall into the trap of chasing symptoms with supplements, and instead start to rebuild your health with the foundational 4. We partnered with Nutridyne so that you can save 15% on every order, and not just with the foundational 4, but all of your other supplements as well. Go to foundationalhealth365.com, click on Shop Brands, and then Nutridyne, set up your account, and you're all set to automatically get 15% off all orders. Now let's get back to the Foundational Health Podcast.
So let's look at the benefits that I mentioned. I think this is going to be fun and honestly very educational because we're going to look at the benefits in a timeline format, which we'll have for you in a free downloadable guide on our website. So, as always, I've done a lot of prep for this podcast. I certainly came across plenty of really good timelines online, but in listening to other podcasts, I just didn't really hear that at all. So hopefully this is something that if it's new to you, you find it beneficial. As I was reading through it and doing a lot of research and verifying what I was reading and listening to, I found it incredibly beneficial and motivating, honestly, where I'm going to incorporate more fasting into my life as well. Okay, so here are those fasting benefits in timeline format. Here's what we know. When you do an intermittent fast of 13 to 16 hours, this is where things like HGH, human growth hormone, begins to increase. That means muscle and bone and really every single bodily structure, including your brain, has benefits to an increased level of HGH. They're going to be healthier. You're going to be building healthier levels of those. Everybody else thinks of HGH as muscle, but it's so much more than that. This is also during those 13 to 16 hours where you're going to see a reduction in inflammation. Fat burning begins at this stage. In fact, a review of about 40 studies, well-done studies on intermittent fasting show that on average, just with this, no calorie restriction, no exercise, just intermittent fasting, on average, over approximately 10 weeks, people lost about 1 pound per week. And that might not sound like that much, but that is pretty tremendous, especially when you consider that over time combined with all the other health benefits that we've seen. And then you'll also see an increase in ketone production. Ketones are a fat fuel that triggers something in the body called autophagy. And then you have improved energy and focus as well. That happens for many reasons. One of them is something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that increases due to ketones taking over as your main source of fuel instead of sugar. So that's what happens literally in those 13 to 16 hours of an intermittent fasting. You start to increase ketone production and they take over as the energy source for the body instead of sugar, which is a great thing when it comes to fat loss and all of the other things that we've talked about so far. And by the way, this BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that's a really big deal. No pill can do that, by the way. And you get to do it for free just by fasting for a 13 to 16 hour period of time. Now let's move on to 16 to 24 hours. What are the benefits there? We see cellular detoxification begins. And this happens through autophagy, which I already mentioned. And by the way, autophagy, there's like Nobel Prize winning research on autophagy alone because it has so many tremendous benefits to our health. Ultimately, what it means is the cells are going through clean up mode and getting rid of waste and toxins, and that's a really good thing. And then because of that, we also see cellular repair increase during this phase. We see improved immune function. Cancer prevention factors kick in at this point. Blood pressure starts to lower. Cholesterol numbers improve. Heart health improves. And this is shown when people do this consistently. We're not talking about just doing one intermittent fast a year. We're talking about doing this as a consistent practice. We also see insulin sensitivity improve. So that is the benefits in that 1 day intermittent fast. Now, if we move beyond that to what is often called those water fasts or extended fasts, from 24 to 36 hours, you have intestinal stem cell regeneration. And if you know anything about stem cells, which we're not going to talk about a whole lot today, That's a really big deal. So you start to see regeneration of stem cells in your gut taking place in that 24 to 36 hour window. Something called GABA production at that point, GABA. That is a non-essential amino acid that has a calming effect, and it helps with things like anxiety and depression. It also just helps to heal the brain, which is why brain healing increases at this time period. You also have autoimmune disease healing. That's a really big deal for all the people struggling with autoimmune disease out there. 36 to 48 hours. So now we're at a day and a half up to 2 days of water fast. And I'll just stop right there and say, I know that sounds like a big deal if you've never done a fast, but I promise it's not as difficult as it seems. Certainly the first time you do it, it might be once you get used to just drinking more water, which helps calm the hunger pains. It isn't that difficult. Just requires the right mindset going in, and it requires the commitment saying like, you know what, I'm not giving in, I'm doing this. And then it just becomes that much easier. And like anything, if you have accountability partners, if you're going through this with a friend, with family members, you just hold yourself accountable and you don't allow the cheat to happen in there. So you can do this, I promise you. 36 to 48 hours. Let's look at the benefits there. Now you have reduced glucose stores. Reduced glucose stores results in more increased ketone production, that fat burning fuel. You have reduced insulin stores and increasing insulin sensitivity. That's fantastic news, by the way, for pre-diabetics and diabetics, type 1 or type 2. When you can increase your insulin sensitivity, that is a fantastic thing. Further increases in fat burning are seen at this point. Increases in detoxification, which have already started earlier on, but they increase more at this point. And then there's tremendous anti-aging benefits as well from antioxidant production and lots of other things. Now we're moving beyond 2 days. So you've gotten into the 2-day mark, you've made it there, and now we're moving on to that 2 to 3 day window, 48 to 72 hours. This is where, and by the way, you still have all of the things that I have mentioned so far are still happening. It's not like they shut down and then the next thing starts. You just get increased benefits of all of those things. But you have some new things that start to kick in. 48 to 72 hours is where you see a reset in dopamine receptors. That's a really big deal, especially for addicts, and why there are so many things out there, so many studies showing that people who are addicted to things get tremendous benefit from fasting because you have a reset in the dopamine receptor, and that dopamine rush is often what addicts are after with certain drug use as well. You also have a reduced anxiety and depression taking place and magnified at this point, and that's largely because GABA production will ramp up. It increases even more through that 48 to 72 hours, more anti-aging, antioxidant production, and then listen to this, HGH between that 48 to 72 hours, that human growth hormone, which is so critical, that increases by up to 500% at this point. Absolutely phenomenal. You can't mimic that. You can't produce that in any other way. Autophagy peaks also, that cellular cleanup that your body goes through between 48 to 72 hours. And by the way, autophagy is considered to be the number one reason that you want to fast. So I don't want to gloss over that by any means. Autophagy is a really, really big deal. And if that was the only benefit we saw from fasting, that would be enough, but there's so much more. Autophagy peaks between the 48 to 72 hours. Immune system cells regenerate more at this point. Bone and muscle stem cells start to regenerate. And then we see healing from all chronic conditions and accelerated healing from all things, including cancer, which is massive. So how should women fast differently? First of all, There is a book that I highly recommend because I'm not going to do this justice, and there's so many nuances. There's so many different avenues that we could go down here, and it would be impossible for me to cover all of that. So I highly recommend the book called Fast Like a Girl. It's written by Dr. Mindy Pelz, P-E-L-Z, and we'll have a link to that in our show notes. We may even put that on our website to make it easy for people. The reason that I recommend that is because, like I said, there's so many nuances here. And if you have listened to any of my 3 podcasts on female hormones, you'll remember, for instance, with the menstrual cycles, it's really easy to say like, oh, here's what to do if you have that perfect cycle of 1 to 28 days, but a lot of women don't. So for the sake of this podcast, I am going to talk about that perfect cycle, but that is why I recommend reading that book, Fast Like a Girl, which is very research-based, and it talks about these different nuances and how to listen to your body as a female and make sure that you are doing the right things. That being said, for those women that already have that perfect menstrual cycle and you're tracking it and you know you're on that normal 28-day cycle, then here are some really good rules to follow. Days 1 through 10, this is considered that estrogen building phase, and estrogen responds very well to fasting. This is one of the reasons that men do well with any type of fast is because they have estrogen as well, but testosterone falls into that same category. That testosterone responds very well to fasting. So a lot of these rules that we're talking about here, they change because of progesterone, which we'll get into. But days 1 through 10, during that estrogen building phase, great idea to fast. Any and all fasting should be done during that period of time, intermittent or extended fasting. So when you're trying to get in, like if you decide that, hey, I'm going to make that 3-day water fast part of my regular health routine, this would be the time to do that. And then days 11 through 15, this is where estrogen is peaking and progesterone starts production. So it's still okay during that phase to do intermittent fasting for women for shorter periods of time. Usually that 13 to 15 hour window is recommended at this point, which if you recall from the benefit timeline, there's still great benefits to that. So don't think like, oh, I can't do any fasting at that point. During that 13 to 15 hour window, as a reminder, this is where we saw HGH increasing. We saw a reduction in inflammation, fat burning begins, improved energy and focus because of that really important brain-derived nootropic factor, BDNF, increasing, and ketone production starting. So again, don't think you can't do it. Still really beneficial to do that 13 to 15 hour window during those days. And then on days 16 through 19, there is a dip in progesterone at this point. And then all types of fasting are acceptable here as well, just like in days 1 through 10. And I realize if you're not tracking your cycle, that may be very difficult to follow, but this is why I recommend the book. And then days 21 through 28, this is where progesterone peaks. And as I mentioned, progesterone doesn't like fasting for some reason. I'm sure there's some great science behind it. I personally actually don't know that, but I do know that progesterone doesn't respond well to fasting at all. And because of that, during this last week of the cycle, no fasting is recommended for women. Instead, you want to help to increase the benefits of progesterone and feed the progesterone in a sense, make it respond even better. And you can do that by focusing on high quality complex carbs and healthy fats in your diet, especially during this period of time. Always a great idea to focus on protein, but in addition to that, high quality complex carbs and healthy fats will really help when it comes to the benefits that you'll see on days 21 through 28 while you're not fasting. There is a reason women crave carbs at this point in their cycle, and that is because of progesterone. It causes some carb craving. So what I would suggest is do not sabotage yourself by feasting on processed junk carbs, especially if you've done the work to track your cycle and you've gone through intermittent fasting and you're doing all these good things. And then I get it, like the carb cravings kick in, and certainly carb cravings are a real thing for men as well. But don't sabotage yourself by feasting on those processed junk carbs. Instead, focus on those high quality, complex carbs like fruits and vegetables and other things. And in fact, it's such an important topic that my very next podcast, that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on how to make carbohydrates healthy again, because you can. For perimenopausal women, this is where that menstrual cycle becomes very erratic. And if you aren't very erratic in your cycle, you can still, like if you haven't gotten that far into perimenopause, it's starting to change, but it's not that erratic, you can still follow everything that we just talked about with those regular menstrual cycle rules around fasting. So this can be tricky because your cycle can be erratic for some people, especially as they get further into perimenopause. But this is a huge part of listening to your body, reading that book so you know what to expect, you know what to do, and you know how to fast according to what your body's doing at that time. So I'll give a few examples here. If you're starting to notice more dryness throughout your body in different areas, including your skin and your hair, this is a sign your body needs estrogen. And it means that you need more fasting in your life, believe it or not. So during those dryness phases, absolutely, this is a great time to fast. If you're waking in the morning and you're absolutely just famished, you're starving, listen to your body. This is where you want to listen and eat because your body is needing progesterone at that point. That's what that's telling you. So you would focus more on high quality complex carbs, healthy fats, and again, still those healthy proteins as well, but more of a focus on high quality complex carbs and healthy fats if you're not already doing that. So this definitely can be tricky. So for those that want a deeper dive, for sure, get that book. And it becomes really important, I think, especially for women in that perimenopause stage of life where everything just becomes a little bit more tricky. Okay, moving on to post-menopause. That means done with menstrual cycles. No more menstrual cycles. You're beyond the perimenopause years. For post-menopausal women, because the sex hormones are low, you should stick with primarily intermittent fasting, which you can do on a consistent basis. But when it comes to more prolonged fasting, for most women in the post-menopausal stages of life, you can still do this, but I would stick with maybe a 24 to 72 hour fast and only about once per quarter. So it's not that too many people are like craving to do that more often than that, but I don't want you to think like you can't do this because you're in post-menopause. Intermittent fasting, great. You just want to not as often do the longer fasts of 24 to 72 hours. So in my opinion, there's always going to be pros and cons to everything in life. But in this case, I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons in doing a 24 to 72 hour fast if you're only doing it once a quarter, once every 6 months, once a year. Still tremendous benefits in that. So don't think that it just excludes you from doing those things because of something you read or heard. Okay, kids and fasting. This is definitely a question that I get a lot, and I see it a lot on social media. And just like almost anything, if you Google kids and fasting, you'll see absolutely not. This is dangerous. It's just not true. There's just nothing to back that up. In fact, you'll see all kinds of stuff if you start Googling on how there's recommendations that nobody should fast ever. And I won't tell you who puts out those sources of information. You can probably figure it out for yourself, but it's the people that don't want you to get healthier. If you want to get healthier, don't listen to that. Follow the actual science and what millions of people are doing and seeing the benefits from it. When it comes to kids and fasting, there's still tremendous benefits for kids, and it is not dangerous. But in my opinion, it shouldn't be forced or required. And it obviously, you would want to make sure that your kids are getting enough proper good food throughout the day to fuel their growing bodies. So really for the ages of like 2 to 13, clearly you're not going to fast a baby, right? So we got to use some common sense in here. But for toddlers at ages of 2 up to the teenage years, maybe 2 to 12, really it's key to follow their lead. And my wife and I try to do this with our kids initially early on. I don't think we did that very well, but follow their lead when they're hungry. You don't want to force breakfast on them just because Kellogg's told you that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That literally is where that came from, by the way. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day was something I think they started as their advertising slogan back in the 50s or 60s, and it has stuck. And so just because you've been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day, you don't need to force that on a child. If they really don't want to eat, they're not ready to eat. So if they don't want to eat breakfast, then let them not eat. Now, obviously, if it's past noon and they're choosing playing over eating, because kids will do that, and they're hangry and you're noticing a pattern with this, then it's time to step in as a parent, get them some good nutrient-dense, non-processed food. So just be smart about it. Listen to their bodies. Don't force food, but also don't force fasting. And certainly it's not something that needs to be done on a schedule or on a consistent basis with a young child. Now moving into the teenage years, 13 plus. So with this, you want to do it, first of all, in a mentally healthy way, especially in our society. So focus on the health benefits of fasting. Don't focus on weight loss or doing it for body image purposes. Certainly that comes into play, and those are the beneficial side effects of fasting, but that should not be the focus. You also never want to force it on them. You want to lead by example. You want to educate them on the health benefits. And then if you are educating them, and also leading by example, which is the best education you could ever do, they will likely start asking questions and want to do it themselves. The inspirational and educational takeaways from today. Number one, success equals simple habits performed daily over time. Number two, knowledge without action is powerless. As a result of that, let's take some action. 3 actionable takeaways. Number one, download the free guide and protocol that we have on our website for fasting. Number 2, ladies, buy the book, Fast Like a Girl, if you want a deeper dive into that, especially perimenopausal women. Number 3, try a 16-8 fasting window as a start. Pay attention to how you feel. Don't give in to hunger and cravings, but instead focus on all of the benefits. Download that benefits timeline that we're going to have as a guide. Put that on your refrigerator. You are going to see benefits in your life. I guarantee it. You just have to focus on those and not on the hunger and the cravings when you're not used to doing this on a regular basis. If you stick with it, you will reap the rewards. Number 3, you are a leader. Lead by example. If you enjoyed today's podcast and found it beneficial, I want you to think about who needs to hear this message. Be a leader for them. Drop them a text and tell them to check out the Foundational Health Podcast with Dr. Kevin Schultz on the benefits of fasting. Until next time, make health your hobby.
Thank you for listening to the Foundational Health Podcast. As always, if you would like to learn more about making health your hobby, visit our website at foundationalhealth365.com and follow me on Facebook at Kevin Schultz DC Foundational Health.